All right, folks, sorry about the technical difficulties. Welcome to today's Delegate Office Hours, Thomas Flutter of GovCons. And I wanted to start off today. Thank you all for joining us. Really appreciate it. Start off, one thing is we use the chat feature during the call, and also you can raise your hand during the call using your reactions option in the Zoom. So real quick, I wanted to ask, there was a question that was raised in the forum, is talking about the time and date of the call, and I just wanted to get everyone's maybe I just open the floor of thoughts if this is still good for everyone, or if we want to change it up. So I'll open the floor to ask folks who are here on the call to see what your thoughts were.
I raised my hand, so I guess I'll just go for it. I think the only suggestion was just to do this bi-weekly, so every other week, which I think would stimulate a little bit more discussion and give us more of a backlog of topics to prioritize and discuss, but open to any other thoughts there.
All right. So Tim is proposing moving this to bi-weekly.
I'd agree.
And do yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Raphael, go ahead. You have the floor.
Oh yeah, I'd prefer bi-weekly as well. I think we've seen it run a little bit out of steam in the last weeks, and I think every 2 weeks we would have a broader variety of topics to choose from. And Thursday is already, I think, quite full with the GNR and everything, so I'd be happy to move it to bi-weekly.
Okay, thank you. Do mentions, I think it works before the weekly Gov call. So do you guys feel like if we move to bi-weekly that the time of the call is good for everyone right before the GNR? Okay, Tim says, yeah, that's fine. Anybody else's thoughts on that? I just want to spend another minute on this. So.
Maybe you could just make a poll on the forum, or we just make a +1 count here, or an emoji poll here, like thumbs up, and then just count the thumbs.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And Du says that we can just fight on the forum. So, all right. Sounds good. Well, I didn't want to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to put that out there. I'll follow up with a forum post and look at bi-weekly, and we can go from there. So thank you all for your feedback. Just moving on, I want to open the floor to folks that have joined the call here from facilitators and community folks and delegates. So the floor is open.
Yeah, hi.
Hey,
thanks, Thomas. Hi, how are you? So I wanted to dive into one of the most talked about forum post in recent memories. Maybe not, but it's pretty live. And it's MIP 61, the USDC, and I saw an interesting post, I think 24 hours ago, by Robert of SES, and kind of wanted to hear from him on his thinking behind the post. It was a small post, Robert, where you talk about the possibility of having a smart contract be the sort of, I guess, lack of a better word, middleman instead of 4 individuals on a multi-sig. So would it be possible, and hopefully this is not the subject for GNR call. If I did, I apologize, my fault. But maybe you can kind of walk us through your thinking process there in the SES team, how you and the rest of the team are thinking about perhaps bringing this to MIP 81 when it goes through the green light process, and if it does get approved by MKR token owners and recognized delegates and shadow delegates, how you plan on kind of tackling that.
Hey, Frank, you confused me a little bit because you said SES, but I quickly realized it was me. Wow, this started with, as we started seeing this plus also the Appaloosa deal, and then seeing the commentary inside of Discord in the forum, it became clear from a technology perspective, and David was looking at a lot of this on my team, and also Miguel, and also Nikolai and some others. But we started looking at a way and started asking questions, because we thought that maybe there could be more of a generic solution to custodying a smart contract. And as we dug into it, we reached out to Jen and business and growth and asked her to make some connections on the institutional rewards side. And so we did that, and we started poking at it. And it looks like there's some possibilities to potentially solve or get around some of the issues that have been raised as it relates to the custody. How do we get USDC back? Can we request it on demand? There's a lot here. And so it just made sense to reach out. I posted a little snippet of that. There's still a bunch of work to be done. We're waiting back to hear from them on what's possible and not. It looks like it can be done. And the question is really in the details of the implementation. And so I was really happy to see Coinbase had modified the MIP to include CES and the implementation side of things for the technical piece of it, to be able to suggest that, yes, we're open to looking at solutions. Now, there's another comment in there about the future, and I think what we need to do is, just as a community, what we'll do is that we'll, from a technical implementation perspective, we'll look at different options that may be available to us, and we'll be able to start that discussion. And then we as a maker community can decide, do we feel like this is a future way that we want to work with Coinbase, or is it a here and now? And we think we can leverage this also potentially in the MIP 82, the Montellis Appaloosa, I think it is, MIP as well, where there might be some value in applying that there. So our first goal was, we wanted to reach out to Coinbase as a technology partner, because we think that it's not only today and it's outside of the MIPS, but I think there could be some really cool integration that we could do between Maker and Coinbase. And that was the other impetus to reach out to them as well. So hopefully, Frank, that answers a little bit of your questions. There's a lot more detail here, but I'll reserve that for a future conversation.
Again, I gather you can't get into specifics of the implementation of technical work, and your thoughts on whether the devs over at Coinbase can pull this off. And I asked that because I feel like, the Gov Alpha team worked a lot with the custodial services, and not just Coinbase, others, I believe, and I could be wrong, Gov Alpha could correct me, but it was kind of a frustrating process to get them the MKR custody they had to be delegated to delegates that are here and others. So I'm just a bit worried there that, I don't either have the bandwidth, the talent, and I apologize to the CB devs. I'm not talking down on you guys, but I worry there. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. But if you can, I totally get it. It's early on, and obviously this has a long way to go.
Yeah, and I don't really want to detail a specific solution at the moment. It appears, just based upon the initial conversations, that it's possible. Now it becomes, what's the motivation to do it? What's become very clear for us at CES, from a technology and implementation perspective, there's a lot of opportunity to drive the manual intervention out of this middle layer, this custodian trust area. With RWAs, there's still going to be the need for a lot of legal and agreements and such, but we're starting to identify different areas where, hey, we could automate this. And we bumped into this and said, you know, this is a great opportunity to potentially implement some technology here. We don't think it's too extensive, but it really requires the cooperation from Coinbase. And we're hoping that they'll also be on board with it as well.
Got it. Thank you. Appreciate the input there, Robert.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Frank. Wanted to see if anyone else had any more comments or thoughts on this. I know we've got a couple of things in the chat, but I know if anybody wanted to
Happy
bring
to say
that
for the
up. Go
court.
ahead.
Yeah, sorry if my mic's a little messed up. I have the wrong headphones, but basically to Frank's point earlier, it's not a lack of ability. It's just it would cost them a bunch of money to do. So unless one of their customers makes a big stink about it, they probably won't, because they have no incentive to come up with the delegation platform. Because basically, if we upgrade the contract.
You're breaking up, Payton. Can you?
Yeah, Payton, you're breaking up there. All right. While Payton gets realigned on his headphones, did anyone else want to chime in on this discussion? The paper rights. People have threatened them to leave for Anchorage before, even if they deliver those threats. So I didn't know if anybody wanted to.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that subject line is about. But Robert brought up Appaloosa, which is, I believe, MIP 85. Cool name, by the way, if you're into horses. Oh, MIP 82. Sorry, Miguel. Thank you for that. MIP 82, Appaloosa, USDC. Perhaps we can get some thoughts, initial thoughts, and hopefully strategic finance has looked into it. What you guys are thinking there as far as this proposal, if you had a chance to review it, and any opportunities to perhaps in the future get some cash WAs that can do something similar to what MIP 82 is proposing.
Yeah, so we looked at it briefly currently. I think it's an interesting proposal. It's different than all the other ones that you see currently, which are more, let's invest in bonds, maybe 65, Coinbase and so on. You have custody risk, but at the end of the day, you get more or less a yield linked, or very not linked, but somewhat coming from bonds. Here, it's more risky. But it's not that risky if you look at what we are doing since the beginning, which is crypto-backed loans. It's doing the same thing, but outside of DeFi in CeFi. And so the question is, what are the risks, and if the yield is sufficient for the risk we are taking? I think very naively, I didn't look into details on that front, but we can assume that at MakerDAO, we are doing crypto-backed loans in a safer way than anyone else, because we are MakerDAO. And we have the best team, Primoz and others, and P to make good liquidation and so on. Liquidation are very short, so that's good as well. If we do it off chain, we have less control of the process. Usually they don't liquidate very fast. Maybe it's once per day, something like that. So it's quite different. The yield is better than DeFi. We've looked at it for many other counterparties, and the main reason we found is that people in the traditional system like to have a counterparties. they have to sign a contract with someone. And even if Nexo and Celsius have used MakerDAO, some people still want to have a counterparty, someone they can speak to and sign a piece of paper and have maybe custom terms as well. So I don't have the definitive answer on if it's a good deal or not. That will be up for Maker Token holders to decide. But I think it's a good tool to have in our belt anyway. Even if you don't use it currently, or if you don't want to use it currently, it's good to have the pipe because we never know. Currently, for instance, the treasury yield is 3%, 4% if you go a bit longer on durations. So it's quite good. In DeFi, the yields on crypto-backed loans are what? You can get 1% on average on our loans, not even sure. You have 60 basis points on AVE. That's not very important. That's not very good. And CeFi crypto-backed loans might be a solution to keep an exposure to crypto-backed loans, but with a better yield than what we get in DeFi currently. If that's a bit helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate that. Would you say that this structure, if it does come into fruition, you get a smart contract in between there. Do you think it's something that could be a template for future cash-like collateral types? So in other words, I've been hearing a lot about like Signum Bank doing a lot of work. And, speaking of DeFi, Signum Bank, I'm just hearing their name everywhere. It seems like they're sticking their nose wherever they can in DeFi. So if this does work out, do you think this is a model that can possibly, and I know it's early, so to be fair, right? But do you think it's a model that could be a template? And how much do you consider it as an automated type of onboarding structure for RWAs and anything cash-like RWAs? Hopefully that makes sense.
You are speaking more about MIP 65 here with Signum investing in ETFs?
Yeah, and I think Signum is also playing a role in MIP 82. So, and like I said, I've just heard so many people trying to bring RWAs on chain that are looking to work with Signum Bank. So, but not just necessarily them. In the future, do you guys in strategic finance see other players possibly using a structure like MIP 82, MIP 65 as a way to onboard cash like that?
We have plenty of proposals currently, and we are trying to sort them out because some are still not public. And I think for Maker Token holders, what could make sense is to think about a framework where you want to go to the balance sheet allocation of MakerDAO. Because we have 6 billion, we have 4 billion that are sitting doing nothing in USDC. But 4 billion is a lot. But if you put 1.6 billion in Coinbase institutional reward, $500 million in Coinbase loans, Appaloosa, CoinShare has a proposal as well. We have now a GUSD. Well, it's a lot of capital that you can invest. And then the idea is to find, well, how should we invest all this capital to keep the liquidity, keep safety for the holders, and get the best yield to increase the surplus buffer, which is always good to the holders, and maybe at some point buy ETH or buy Maker Token down the line. So we have plenty of proposals. Should we try to invest in almost everything, diversify, or just invest in those that are on a Pareto front in between the dimension of liquidity and yield? So it doesn't make sense to invest in something that is not very liquid, but giving you only 10 basis point or 1 basis point or 1%. For instance, currently we have a lot of capital deployed in GUNI DAI USDC, the Uniswap V3 pools, that is getting us 6 basis points. Does it make sense to keep it there? Or should we use this capital, stop those loans, and put it in GUSD and get 1.25%? It's really now a game of optimization and see where we want to go. And Maker Token holders can decide, well, we want to invest in short-term bonds because the yield in TradFi are good right now, but we don't want to go more than, 50%, 30%, 25%, and we want some exposure to crypto-backed loans because we think that's the future as well, both in the DeFi on-chain and maybe as well in off-chain world with Coinbase Appaloosa, for instance. So it's really a kind of trade-off and a decision of, well, what is the best play for MakerDAO balance sheet? And maybe the answer is to invest only in 3 options. one super liquid that is yielding a little bit, like Gemini. We could invest 2 billion in Gemini and keep only that, and we remove the other PSMs because Gemini is giving us already more than enough. Have something in between. This is kind of liquid, but yielding even more. Could be Coinbase institutional reward, for instance. And something like MIP 65 that is providing more yield, but is less liquid. You shouldn't rely on this for liquidity for the next few months. So,
Frank, there's another perspective. So there's that, and then the other perspective I'll give you from an implementation perspective. So the best way to look at every RWA today, and I think sometimes we gloss over this based upon comments that people make, is that everything is manual and everything has code, and there are nuances for every single RWA. So everything's a one-off. So if we want to scale this, one of the things that, you know, I had a forum post, and one of the tactics inside of that a few weeks back was a signal. And so one of the things that I feel pretty strong about is that we're gonna need to put out to the community, whether it's a signal or whatever, however we want it to work given the end game stuff. But I think SRs are still there, and then we move to a governance poll, or a facilitator can move directly to a governance poll. Is that what do we want to focus on? What that allows us to do is that develop some use cases that are similar across collateral that might be common, but across different suppliers of that, and then try to introduce automation and get away from more of the manual processes that we have. The other thing that we're going to be doing is that doing a little education on this concept around collateral management, because we get focused on getting collateral into the system, but as it relates to once it's in the system, then what do we do? Right? So just a really simple example is that there's a lot of documentation that chases these deals. When something needs to be amended, it needs to go through a governance process. That has to be managed. We also have to know where the documents are located. We also have to ensure that we're getting paid per the documents. Each of these deals have a different way of paying us. Now, some of this information just simply bubbles up into the financial reporting that strategic finance does. But there are people that need to be involved in every single deal to understand the nuances and details of the money flows to ensure we get paid at the end of the day. And also, what happens if the collateral changes? So what's the ongoing need for reassessment of that collateral? And how often does that happen? And it could be different per the collateral types. So there's a hidden cost of doing business here. And it's not that it's not doable. It's just that there needs to be a better process around that. So we'll start to put out a bit more information on what we feel needs to be done here. And I think it's not a single core unit's responsibility, by the way, but there's going to need to be a process behind managing these RWAs. And then in the future, I think, for vault adoption, right? Because this is going to have to carry through to different MetaDAOs that will adopt vaults, however that might work. So there's a bunch of stuff that needs to be done there too.
Yes, I guess, like, you know, myself, I'm guilty of it. Like, I focus more on the onboarding and how do we collect the fees, right? The stability fees. So I hear you on that, Robert. Can you walk us through a scenario though where, and I don't mean to pick on MIP 82, but maybe there's a default there, or I think the collateral ratio is 120. Say it falls below that. Are you saying that from Gov Alpha to protocol engineering to even delegates, MKR token owners, there should be a process that everybody follows in case, and I hate to use the word, but in case of an emergency?
Well, yeah, it's so when we do the implementation, one of the key pieces of that is the money flow diagram. So it's like, where does it start? Where does it go? How does it come back? How do we get repaid? What happens when emergency shutdown might happen? So understanding that, and each flow is different. So that's one of the first places that we start. Now, inside of that, we believe there's opportunities for automation, but today we have what we have. And understanding literally where are the documents for a particular deal, as an example, where are all the documents. Now they're there, but you'd be hard pressed to find, for example, with HV Bank, like, where do you go to find them? And then once you find them, what do you actually do with them? So meanwhile, it's very chatty in our channels between, like, Christian's helping, with the legal work still on HV Bank, and Miguel is popping in and trying as a product manager, helping with that flow and making sure things happen, the governance processes are being followed, and you see that pop up in the executive and language. So it's and I've had this conversation with Arun, and I want to point this out, and I'm trying to help him understand, and maybe I can get some support from this group as well, is that I get the feeling that he thinks it's a future activity. And I'm trying to ground him in, no, Arun, this is a today activity. And when I talk about automation, that's a future activity, because we need to figure out what we can automate today based upon all the deals that we're doing. But right now, the details have to be managed, especially if we're going to do vault adoption, because some of this is going to transition off into the new MetaDAOs to be able to then manage it themselves. And each MetaDAO might want to do it differently. So if there's automation available and it's done from a technology perspective, that might be a baseline service that CES, at least in our current form, can provide to the protector MetaDAOs and potentially other ones. But we're not quite sure even of the structure of the end game and the different players inside of that. So it's hard to see where we might fit in that. But I think there are services that we can provide that others will take advantage of. Meanwhile, they'll be managing those vaults themselves, however they might do that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That was actually going to be my next question about MetaDAOs and how this could all work, assuming the MetaDAO game plan gets voted in. But yeah, but I appreciate the input. Thanks, Robert. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate that. There was a question in the chat paper brought up, and this may be to you, Robert, about who's monitoring existing deals, like verifying money is in the success trusts. I don't know if that was something.
I don't have a direct answer to that today. So I had my first meeting with Matt last week, just to try to connect with him and get up to speed and figure out what's going on. And then the next steps are, obviously, as we're looking at and putting some meat behind the collateral management side of things, more from a process perspective, that's one of the questions we have. And I know, like, for example, Matt provides form updates, right? But today I'm not exactly sure who is responsible for going in and looking at the documents and then verifying those amounts have been paid, and then making sure that that's reflective in the financial reports that strategic finance posts.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still trying to get our arms around that. So I don't have a clear answer for you today.
Yeah, I think Nadia pointed out in the chat that it was RWF that used to monitor that, but yeah, RWA is missing in action, I guess. But
well, I think, Frank, at least in my conversation with Will, I think this was and the outlines that he shared with CES. I think this is what he was trying to put together. And I know there was communication was the biggest issue in trying to understand exactly what was happening there. So we're going to take whatever Will and his new team had put together and see what we can do with it, and then figure out what's usable in the way of moving that forward. It seemed on paper, it seemed comprehensive, but I just don't know what there.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, we just got a couple other comments in the chat. talking about verifying the money, and then also saying that there was, I believe, monthly audits or bank statements. So didn't know if there's anything else we wanted to add to that. All right. Robert, Nadia brought up a question. When is Will giving you that info? Did he tell you, or didn't know if you wanted to?
Yeah, I'm still trying to determine that. You know, if he stopped working on that, I've been all right. So just send me over what you need and what you have, and I still haven't received that yet. So it's work in progress.
Work in progress. All right. Thank you, Robert. Any more comments or feedback from this conversation? Didn't know if we want to move on to another topic. In our GNR call today, the discussion topic is MIP 82 overview. Alan Peterson is going to be joining us for the discussion segment. Wanted to put that out for you. What else? We've got about 10-15 minutes left in the call, so wanted to see what else is on your mind. Yeah, Raphael, go ahead.
Oh, just a quick chill, not chill, but chill. Tim and I updated JokeDAO, and we want to run a contest on Endgame. I'll link to the thread. There's a poll. What kind of road would be most interesting to you? We'll keep pushing that format because we're just so in love with it, and I think it's great. So give it a spin. Please participate in the votes, and then we'll run exactly what you want. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Raphael. Appreciate that, and thank you for linking that in the chat. All right, the floor is wide open for anyone else. I don't have any hand raised or anything else in the chat.
Yeah, actually, I see Juan is on the call from SES with an S for sugar. I was wondering if we could get an update on the dashboard for. Come on, brother, you're there, right, Juan? I wonder if we could get an update on the KPI dashboard that you guys were working on. Sort of give us an idea where it's at, where it's going. How do we get there?
Can you hear me? Is my mic okay?
Yes, perfect.
Nice. I read that there's a slight delay on the next iteration, but there's a version coming out this Tuesday, if I remember correctly. So yeah, news this Tuesday.
Very cool. Looking forward to that, man.
I wanted to shield something else. Tomorrow, Wouter is going to be presenting what or potential course of action for if the vote of the endgame passes. So yeah, I invite anyone that wants to play red team and take kind of like the other side of that debate. I'm going to try to moderate it as neutrally as possible, and yeah, it might be fun. So tomorrow in the SES updates.
Sounds good. Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Well, appreciate that. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. Do we have any other topics that we want to touch on? I do just noted that got Alex in stable mode. That'd be nice to hear everyone. Thanks. Welcome for joining us. You've got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Actually, so I got this question when I was in the event at Token 2049, because we had some potential real asset team that was also asking me this question, and I was curious if somebody has insight to it. It's just like, so we have, for example, Coinbase approaching Maker governance to potentially use the USDC, right? And we also know that there's Mortales and Backed in the pipeline. So the question was that, is it, for example, their USDC in the system that they get to, for example, split it and use it, or would it be like basically they have to compete and then there'll be one team, or is that something that, for example, governance has to decide? Because I was also kind of, interested to know that, for example, the deal with Coinbase right now, I probably have to go and read more details. But would it be just like a single, I would say, user of the USDC in the system? Maybe somebody can give us more insights.
All right, thank you, Du. Would anybody like to provide any comments or feedback on? Right, Du. I don't have anybody want to provide any feedback at this time. So.
Oh, no worries. I was just curious, but I think that I can also go back and read more about it. Some questions are better left unanswered. Frankly, it's being mysterious. I need to get him drunk to tell us the answers.
All right.
Man, I wish I had the answer for you, my brother. I thought that was actually a question more for strategic finance, to be honest, but they might be getting ready for the GNR call. But by the way, I want to say welcome to Alex. I actually met you in Paris, man. So excited to have you on board and hopefully help Du make some good delegate decisions and stuff. So
yeah, I need all the help I need. So thank you, Frank.
For sure.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And as we wind up for today's call, I'll open the floor up to see if we've got any last comments or topics that we'd like to touch base on before we wrap up.
I'll just mention briefly that if anyone hasn't seen the partnership announcement from Gemini and Tyler, would recommend checking that out, because this is a huge step forward in the battle for the PSM and extracting value from the PSM. And it's almost entirely on chain. It's a higher degree of liquidity than the Coinbase deal. So something that we've been working on for a while and pretty excited about it, and interested to get feedback, see what people think about it.
Oh man, I just saw that. Thanks for I wasn't on the forum for the last couple of hours. So can you give us a quick breakdown before we finish? I know we only got like 2 minutes, so I'm like Eli 5 on this. I guess it's GUSD, right? Obviously. If you kind of walk us through real quick through it, Mark, that'd be so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's basically a marketing incentive. It's 125 basis points, a little less than the Coinbase deal, but high level. We're going to be receiving incentive payments for operating the Gemini PSM as long as the balance is over 100 million GUSD, which they're looking to facilitate through market making. And the balance will need to be sent from an arranger to us, but we don't have to move any of the balance on the PSM. So there's no extra steps like the Coinbase deal where we actually have to open an account and move the funds into the account. The funds remain in the PSM. We just get a credit to us every, I think it's monthly or quarterly of the interest. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. We're getting yield, but we're also not losing any liquidity, which is really nice.
Very cool. Gonna look to that. Thanks, man.
No problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. I think we're actually just going to be adding that to the GNR call today on initiatives update. So we'll have a continued discussion there. Thank you for that. All right, folks, getting close to the end here. Want to get ready for the GNR call. Want to, just as a friendly reminder, Tim's DVC call tomorrow. Tim, I think you're still on. You're good for that?
Actually, sort of hot off the press, we're going to merge it with SES tomorrow. So the RFC period is over. Frozen period is in on Rune's MIPS. So we have to figure out how we want to host those in a different way. I've got some ideas. We'll figure it out on the forum.
Okay, Tim. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to hopefully joining all of you on the GNR call here in a few minutes. This recording should be posted by tomorrow. Again, we appreciate you. Thanks. See you soon.